Well, Cooks, so I was hanging out, chilling, and some thought just came into my mind, and I thought I'd do a video on it because it's very important to me, right? Remember back in the day when you would watch wrestling and you would look forward to certain wrestlers appearing on your favorite show, whether that be SmackDown or Raw? You know what I mean? Like, you had certain wrestlers whose segments you look forward to, right? Certain wrestlers that you would cheer, that you would enjoy, you know? Personally, one of my favorite wrestlers growing up, for some reason, I don't know why, was D'Lo Brown, right? I thought D'Lo Brown was cool because I used to play with him on WWF Attitude, the video game, because he had an easy to do finisher, the low down from the top rope. And he was easy to play with, I thought. Then D'Lo Brown just was cool. The Sky High was cool. The low down was cool. His mannerisms were cool. He was a cool dude. Yeah, man. So I like D'Lo Brown. And then I would look forward to seeing D'Lo Brown perform, right? Very mildly so, but I would look forward to it a little bit, you know? Then, once the Attitude Era kind of like really ramped up, when they signed like Kurt Angle, the Radicals, I started looking forward to other people like Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Edge and Christian, Dudleys, Hardys, you know what I mean, right? All these guys that came in. And I would really look forward to it. I would think to myself, I wonder what Kurt Angle's gonna do this week. I wonder what Undertaker's gonna do this week on SmackDown or this week on Raw. You know what I mean? Now the question that I ask you, motherfucks, is: does any current wrestler elicit that kind of feeling for anyone? Like, does anyone sit down there Sunday night thinking like, I wonder what John Morrison is gonna do tomorrow on Monday Night Raw? I wonder what Cedric Alexander is going to do on Monday Night Raw. Does anyone think that? Or even worse, I wonder what Ricochet is going to do. No, nobody thinks that, right? Nobody thinks that because there's nothing interesting about any of the people that I just mentioned. And this is a big problem. I understand that WWE is trying to prevent the creation of stars. But does this mean they have to stop from themselves from creating the next D'Lo Brown? I'm not asking for you to create the next Stone Cold. Create the next D'Lo Brown for me, you know? Create the next Jeff Jarrett. You don't have to create the next Undertaker, yeah? Create someone that I can look forward to. And there is perhaps no wrestler that encapsulates this in a worse way than Bray Wyatt, right? Bray Wyatt is a wrestler that you could make the argument of, I wonder what Bray Wyatt's going to do this week. I must tune in. I remember when Bray Wyatt re-debuted as the Cuck, you know, as the children's show Cuckold, right? I remember that guy. And I remember people on like fucking Reddit Squared Circle, all those other jabron websites, just saying things like, the only reason to watch Raw is to watch the Firefly Playhouse or the Firefly Funhouse, right? And I thought to myself, what the hell are these people talking about? I could see the argument back then, at least a little bit, right? Because at any moment during the Firefly Funhouse, Bray Wyatt might turn into the Fiend and explain why he's the Fiend. But of course, they're never going to explain it. Just like they never explained Bray Wyatt, there's no reason to explain the Fiend. People just accept it. Oh, now this guy went more retarded than he usually was, and now he's the Fiend. You know? But for some reason, despite the Fiend now being around for over a year, just popping up left and right, despite this, the Firefly Funhouse still continues. What is the purpose of this? Who looks forward to this garbage? You know, I could see two neckbeards just like next to each other, probably touching flabs, thinking to themselves, I wonder what Ramblin' Rabbit is going to say to Mercy the Buzzard next week on Firefly Funhouse. Do you see what I'm getting at, motherfucks? Why the hell would anyone want to tune in to see the next thing that Ramblin' Rabbit does or Huskus the Pig? I'm ashamed that I even know the names of these puppets. You know, last week they had like a field trip where they had like a Ramblin' Rabbit in the back, right? Signing a carrot for Matt Riddle's rabbit. You know what I mean? This kind of nonsense. What the hell is that all about? You know, how about give me something serious, you know? Oh, the Firefly Funhouse critters are gonna be around. Oh, watch out everyone. It's gonna be some great entertainment, you know? And next week we'll have to tolerate another 5 to 10 minute promo, Bray Wyatt dressed like an asshole with Alexa Bliss saying nonsense, right? Being interrupted by a rabbit puppet. You know what I mean? Like, nothing has ever come from the Firefly Funhouse. No one's ever like gone to the Firefly Funhouse, watched the segment, and then left the segment knowing more. That has never happened, right? That is the sign of a horrible segment. A segment that doesn't advance the story is not good. Even a bad segment that advances the story is better than an amazingly acted or performed segment that doesn't advance anything, right? So for a perfect example, right? I thought like last week's, or I guess this week's AEW Dynamite, the match between Inner Circle and Best Friends and everybody else, I thought that was like a pretty shitty match. Like, I didn't enjoy the match at all. But it forwarded something, right? It furthered a plot line. The plot line was Inner Circle is back together for now, right? It reinforced that. It's like a supporting statement to the thesis. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, for example, I like Sting a lot more than I like fucking, Jake Hager and Sammy Guevara or MJF. But when Sting came out, right, who I like more and I enjoy more, that didn't further anything. He just came on and was like, I'm here, and he left. You know? So even a good segment that involves good wrestlers like Sting can be complete shit if it doesn't advance anything. Now, you combine a segment that advances nothing with a wrestler that is a piece of shit like Bray Wyatt, what do you get, motherfuckers? What do you get? You know what I'm saying? You get nonsense. Nonsense. The only way to get rid of the Bray Wyatt character is at WrestleMania, the Fiend comes out and attacks like 15 people. John Cena comes out, does the AA on him, he gets up, does the lightning fist, takes the mask, breaks it, wipes his ass with it, leaves for another year, and Bray Wyatt gets a new gimmick of a guy who's been traumatized because he lost his mask. And then he can get a dancing gimmick down the line or some other comedy nonsense, you know? This is not working out, fam, right? And the reason this is not working out is because he is not interesting. He's not even D'Lo Brown level of interesting. So you see what I'm getting at? Wrestling can never draw the numbers it used to unless there is a reason to tune in every week. Sometimes this happens with very good wrestlers who do their job correctly, right? And sometimes it happens with shitty wrestlers who the fans get behind, right? Like, for example, Daniel Bryan is a perfect example. You know, I never thought Daniel Bryan was a great wrestler at all. Like, I think in the ring, he's about as good as Gentleman Jack Gallagher, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see anything that Daniel Bryan does that I don't think Jack Gallagher could do, you know? Or couldn't do, I should say. But for some reason, the fans got behind him. And it was something to look forward to. Like, what are the fans going to do this week? What are they going to hijack this week? It wasn't a good thing, but it was something to look forward to. Well, how's the Authority going to screw Daniel Bryan this week, right? But this was not a long-term play. This was a short-term storyline play. I'm talking about create a character that's compelling, like Eddie Guerrero, right? Where every week you're wondering, like, how is Eddie Guerrero going to fit into this program? How is he going to steal the show once again, right? I remember so many great Eddie Guerrero moments that don't even involve him wrestling, because, you know, he's primarily known for being this great in-ring guy, but I don't give a shit about that. I mean, he was, but I don't care about that. What I care about are the things I remember. I remember his promo with The Rock. Remember that, motherfucker, where Eddie Guerrero comes out and he's like, hey, Rock, I went to my daughter's room last night, I said, you know? And he's like, and I saw two posters. One was of me, her papi, right? And then he was like, the other one was of you, of Scorpion King, La Roca, right? And then the fans cheer, right? So he's like, so I took that poster and I ripped it apart. And he's like losing his mind, right? And then he like pretends that he's his own daughter. And he's like, no, papa, no. And then he gets up and he's like, shut up, right? And then The Rock's like, what the hell's wrong with you sick freak, you know? And that was fantastic, right? And The Rock did his shtick. The Rock threw around his 3 or 4 catchphrases. But it's memorable because of Eddie Guerrero, right? Because The Rock did that with everybody. But it's memorable because of Eddie Guerrero. You know, so you're like, oh shit, Eddie Guerrero's coming out with The Rock. This is going to be a classic segment. The probability of this becoming a classic segment is now like 80%. You know what I mean? That's what makes a great wrestler, right? Where you're watching WWE SmackDown, the Halloween episode, and you're like, I wonder what Eddie Guerrero's going to do, right? And you turn it on, and it's Stephanie McMahon dressed as a witch, and Eddie Guerrero shows up dressed as Zorro, you know what I'm saying, with Chavo behind him, right? And he's like, hey, mamacita, you know? He's playing up to the stereotype while being Zorro, which is, in my opinion, hilarious, right? Or everything he did with, like with Dominic and Rey Mysterio. Remember that? That was great. You're like, how is Eddie Guerrero going to be more evil this week? You know, you look forward to it both on a storyline perspective, but even after the storyline ended, the question was, what's Eddie Guerrero going to do now? I need to tune in to see, right? He drew people in. You know, people like Drew McIntyre and Sheamus don't draw people in. Like, and it's not their fault maybe. Maybe they're very good at what they do, and they just haven't been given anything good to do. Like, Drew McIntyre's been given a sword. Oh, it's his grandfather's sword. Like, I don't give a shit about that. That's not interesting. Oh, what's he going to do with his grandfather's sword next week? Is he going to shove it up his own ass, hilt first, or blade first? I don't know, Doug. All I know is what I just said, that you need to have compelling characters, right? Eddie Guerrero, super compelling, right? I mean, think about it. He was so great that you had an entire segment You knew exactly what would happen, and you were still at the edge of your seat. You want an example, motherfuckers? Oh, I'll give you one. Eddie Guerrero is WWE champion, right? Paul Heyman comes out, and he demands that Eddie Guerrero apologize for his recent actions of cheating and, doing like nefarious things, right? So Eddie Guerrero comes out all somber, and Paul Heyman's like, apologize to me, Eddie. And Eddie's like, Paul, you're right. He's like, I'm sorry. And then the fans boo, like when everyone knew that he was going to say something else, the fans boo as if like, oh, how could you do this to us, Eddie, right? Because that's what suspension of disbelief is. It's like, no, Eddie Guerrero, don't give in to Paul Heyman, even though you know 100% he's going to do something, right? And then Paul Heyman, who of course plays his part and doesn't know what's going to happen, he's like, well, I'm glad you apologized. And Eddie Guerrero takes the mic and he's like, Paul, remember when I said that I apologize and that I'm sorry? Paul Heyman's like, yeah. Eddie Guerrero's like, alive! You know what I mean? How great was that, right? That's like an iconic thing that I even use in this channel, where I'm like, alive! It's it, Like I've taught that to my friends who now use it randomly, Like just as simple as that, just him saying, alive! And I wish you guys could see me now because every time I say it, I have to do the little Eddie Guerrero mannerism. I just did it again. So do you see how excited I just get talking about that? Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, quick tangent. You see how excited I just got talking about Eddie Guerrero? I can never get this excited talking about anyone right now on SmackDown or Raw, right? Even the good ones, like Roman Reigns and things like that. He's not that good. You know what I mean? Like, if Roman Reigns leaves for eight months, I don't even watch SmackDown. So that's what I'm getting at, motherfuckers. That's what I'm getting at. We need some wrestlers that let us continue watching, that interest us in what's going to happen next week with them, This is not happening right now on Raw, primarily because of a lack of gimmicks and a lack of actual, promo cutting time, in favor of instead having, predictable promos, right, where every promo is the same. There's, two promos now in WWE, the heel promo and the face promo. That's it. There's no, originality, no individuality, none of that. And when you don't have any of those things, why the hell would you tune in? You can skip 3 weeks and see the same thing. Like, ask yourself, if you didn't watch wrestling for a year, what would you have missed out on? Huh? If you stopped watching wrestling at last year's WrestleMania, name one person that has advanced in terms of where they were on the card from then till now. Not one person. You can maybe argue Randy Orton because he became champion, but not really. You know what I mean? Everyone is exactly where they were. No storylines have happened. I can't even think of one storyline. At least the year before we had Rusev getting cut by Bobby Lashley. You know what I mean? At least we had something. So I don't know what to tell you. We need better things. And by the way, speaking of Rusev, that's another one, motherfucks. I would rather see Rusev getting cut by Lashley, right, than have him talk about video games. Orange Cassidy doesn't care about subscribers. Shut the fuck up, you little dick. So, anyways, that's what I gotta say about that. Wrestling needs better. I don't even want to say better characters. Wrestling needs a hook. Wrestling needs people, right, that will make you want to watch wrestling the next week. This is why debuts are important, because you debut something and you're like, oh, now that there's a new element here, I wonder how this is going to play out the next week, right? At least I do. I remember debuts of irrelevant wrestlers like Eric Escobar. I'm like, oh, where's this going to go? He's with Vicky Guerrero. Is he going to be a mid-carder? Is he going to be a main eventer? I remember the debut of Del Rio. Obviously, the debut of Jericho, right? Do you remember the Highlanders on Raw? Even those guys were more interesting, Because at the very least, remember the Highlanders, the two Scottish guys that were basically villagers, and they didn't know how to behave, and they would take a shit in a urinal or something, that kind of stuff. You'd think to yourself, oh, what's gonna happen next week? Do you remember Shawn Stasiak during the invasion angle, where every week Shawn Stasiak would try to attack someone, some high profile WWE guy, right? And he would bump into a wall or something like that. Right? Even that was something to look forward to. Every time you see the Shawn Stasiak segment starting, you're like, huh, I wonder what dumb shit he's going to do. And that was one of the worst ones. Remember Regal and Tajiri? Just their segments of Regal and Tajiri, in Regal's office, drinking tea, and Tajiri being weird. Anything could have happened in those segments. And that's why it was awesome. Now, you don't need to worry about what's going to happen. When Drew McIntyre has a mic in his hand, he's going to talk about how he always overcomes the odds, right? How he's proud to be Scottish and that he has the warrior spirit, and how he's going to hit someone with a claymore. That's all he's going to do. Randy Orton, same thing. Randy Orton's like, I'm the worst person ever. I'm the most evil being in history, right? And I'm going to hit you with the three most destructive letters in entertainment, sports entertainment, RKO. Get the hell out of here. They're saying the same thing, basically, just from a different viewpoint, I I need people to say things that I haven't heard before. I want to hear, and see great storylines, great development, things that keep me engaged. You know what I mean? That's all I gotta say about that. Great storylines, and rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero. And yeah, I mean, Eddie Guerrero, I ain't got nothing to say about it, man. One of the GOATs, obviously, you know what I'm saying? I lie, this is